Hey everyone, welcome back. If you've ever been responsible for onboarding new employees, whether you're an HR, L&D, or a team manager, you know how chaotic it can get. There's paperwork, IT setup, orientation sessions, training modules, and the kicker, these tasks can fall through the cracks. Today I'm going to show you how to fix that. I'm going to walk you through how to assign onboarding tasks to new employees automatically using a SharePoint list, a list of new hires, and a planner to track the tasks. Whether you're onboarding 2 people or 20 people per week, this system ensures nothing gets missed. Here's what's happening behind the scenes. This automation kicks off when a new employee is selected, not just on a schedule. That way, we're only assigning tasks to accounts that IT has already set up and are ready to go. Our step 1 here is to get all the new employees' information. The flow is going to check the SharePoint list and grab that newly selected employee whose account is confirmed and ready. Then we're going to pull in all the onboarding tasks. We grab all the standard onboarding tasks from the master task list. These are the steps every new hire should complete. Now we're going to calculate due dates. Each task gets a due date based on the employee's start date and how many days after that the task should be completed. Lastly, we assign the tasks in Planner. Tasks are created in Planner and assigned to the right people, HR department, the manager, or the new hire themselves. Each task includes a due date and notes for context. The result, everyone knows exactly what they're responsible for, no chasing people down. Every new hire gets a consistent, organized onboarding experience. Let's talk about why this system works and why it scales so well. First is it's repeatable. Every new hire gets the same onboarding experience with no missteps, no floating checklists, no manual checking off. It's automatic. Once a new hire is selected, the flow runs without manual effort. You just maintain the task list and the new hire list. It's visible. Tasks are assigned in Planner and visible in Teams, so HR, managers, and new hires all know what to do and by when. It's hands-off. You focus on welcoming your new team member and not managing the setup of that. And lastly, it scales. Whether you're onboarding 1 or 100 people, this system keeps working. You can update the master task list at any time, and the flow will always pull the latest version of that list. You're building a system that grows with your team. Let's look at how this works. Here's our SharePoint list of new hires. Once a new employee is selected, the automation will start. It pulls the onboarding tasks, calculates the due dates based on the employee's start date, and creates planner tasks assigned to the right people. You'll see the tasks appear here, complete with due dates and notes for each task. The process is consistent, reliable, and requires minimal effort. Let's start building. We're going to start in Power Automate by clicking the Create button. Today we're going to use the Instant Cloud Flow option and name our flow. Now for our trigger here, we're searching for our SharePoint trigger when a list item is selected. There's no nice way to search for this, so I just scroll down until I see the For a Selected Item option and go ahead and click Create. I still like working for the most part in the old designer, so I toggle that off and switch without saving. Now here we'll go ahead and pick our SharePoint site and we'll select the list name that we're looking at. Now here we're going to be selecting the new employee, so we want to go ahead and add in our employee onboarding list. Now we'll go ahead and add a new step, and we're going to add a step called Get Item. When we use this For a Selected Item trigger, it doesn't bring in a lot of the details or the columns or the information in that list with it. So in Get Item here, we'll go ahead and select the site address again, along with the list name, and we'll go ahead and add in the ID. Now, because we've selected that item already, we already have our ID in our dynamic content. I'll select to add that and add a new step. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to use some variables in this flow. There's 2 different variables we're going to use. The first is the start date of the employee, and the second one we're going to be creating is the due date of that task based on their start date. So we'll go ahead and use the initialize variable. We're going to put a name for our variable. I always like to start my variables with lowercase var, and I use camel case here, which is the capital of each word with no spaces. And here in our type, this is going to be a string type variable. We can go ahead and set in our initial value here by clicking on initial value and selecting the start date of this item. Now we'll go ahead and add a new step here, and we are going to initialize another variable, and we're going to name this var due date. This is also a string type. This due date is going to be different based on which task we're looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and rename these two steps here so I know which ones I'm talking about later. So I'm going to rename this, and I'm just going to add a space, add the name of my variable. I'll go ahead and do this again to our second variable. And now we can go ahead and do the next step. Click add new step, and we are going to get items again. Now remember, we have our list of new employees in a separate list than the list of all the tasks that the team has to complete for each new employee. I'm going to go ahead and choose the site address again. And I'm going to select my list name. And this is our onboarding task list. And we want to go ahead and pull in all of these items. Every single task in there is important, so we don't need to filter this get items. Now our next step here, we're going to use something called switch. And what this does is it's a really good way to handle multiple cases or multiple choices of things instead of just a condition. I think of a condition as it's looking at one or a couple items and there's just a yes or a no. Okay. Here we're looking at, is the task for the HR department, is the task for the manager, is the task for the new employee. Those are three separate things. And if any one of those three things is true, then we want our flow to perform some actions. That's where we use the switch. In the on section, we're going to choose what all of those cases are based on. And so here we're going to search for complete by, and we're looking for the value of that. Now it's going to automatically add and apply to each, and that's because in our complete by, that's a list of tasks. So what we need to do is we actually need to create a planner task for each item in that list of tasks, so that apply to each is added automatically, and we'll just leave that alone. We can go ahead and click on switch to open that back up. And now we'll open the first case here. In our switch here, we're calculating due dates. So our first one, we need to look at and make sure that this equals exactly what our choices in our SharePoint list are. So I'm going to come over to my SharePoint list, and we're looking at this complete by in order to calculate that dynamic due date. So our first option here is before joining with a capital B and a capital J. I'll go ahead and type that in the case. And you can kind of do this one of two ways. You can either start by adding in all your cases to make sure you don't miss anything, or you can work one case at a time. I'm going to go ahead and work on just the before joining case. So I'm going to go ahead and add an action, and we're going to add a compose action. In this compose action here, what we're going to be doing is we're going to actually perform the calculation of that due date. I'll go ahead and come over to expression, and I'm going to use the expression add days. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our start date as that starting point for our due date. So before joining, let's say if any task says that it needs to be completed before joining, I want a due date of 7 days before the start date. So I can go ahead, while this is still selected in my add days, I'll come over to dynamic content and I'll click start date, and you can see that it populates that right here in my expression. I'll come back to the expression tab type a comma, and now we need the integer for the number of days that we're adding. If we want to subtract days, we just need to use a negative number here. So I'm going to say -7 and go ahead and click OK. Now that this date is calculated, I'm going to go ahead and rename this step because we're going to be doing this for each of the 3 cases. So I'm going to click on the ellipses, click rename, and afterwards I'll add a dash, and this is our before joining due date. Now I'll add one more action, and we're going to use the set variable action. We're going to select the variable. We're updating this due date variable. And our variable value here is the output of the step we just created. Now, it's simple right now to know which output we're talking about, but as we start to add more and more compose actions, renaming becomes really important because you can see that it's not named any differently right here in the dynamic content, but it is showing that name in that kind of grayed out box above it. Now let's go ahead and go on to the next case. So I'll click the plus sign to add a case. I'll come back to my list, and if I scroll down, I can see that first day with a capital F, capital D is our next choice for complete by. I'll go ahead and type in first day here. And now here, when we had to perform a calculation to get that date, the start date we already have in a variable. So let's go ahead and add an action, and we'll use the set variable action. We'll choose our due date, and we'll go ahead and just make that the same as our start date. Sometimes I forget here, but then realize it once I see this number 2. Let's go ahead and rename our step over here. This is our before joining due date. We're setting our variable here. This is our first day due date. And now we'll go ahead and add our next case. Hop over into the task list and come down, and I can see that week 1 is the next choice. So I'll go ahead and add that here. Now we need to add days to this again, so we're going to go ahead and click add action. We're looking for that compose action. And in our inputs, we go over to expression, and we'll use the add days expression again. Click into dynamic content, click start date, type a comma, and then at the end of week 1, you can either choose a few different things. I'm going to go ahead and use 7 days after the start date as the due date here and click OK. And I'll rename this step. This is our week 1 due date. And we need to add an action to set that variable here. Click on our due date variable, and we'll add in the output of that compose step. Now, just as a reminder, we want to make sure that we're looking for the correct due date in this output. Sometimes it's not always listed right on top here. And we have one last case here. Go ahead and check back in our list. That's our 30 days case. We can go ahead and type that into our equals. Scroll over. Click add an action. We're going to use the compose action in order to make that calculation. Select inputs, select expression. Use the add days expression. Jump over to dynamic content. Click start date. Type a comma. And we want this 30 days after the start date. I'll go ahead and click OK. And we'll rename this step here. And I realized as I'm going to set one last variable here that I forgot to change the name again. So let's go ahead and rename this step. And we'll click add an action. I'll use the set variable action. And we're going to go ahead and choose the due date, and we'll enter that 30 days due date output. Now we have each of our due dates calculated. We're going to go ahead and collapse this switch, and I will rename this here. This is our due date calculation. Now we're going to go ahead and add another action, And we're going to add another switch here. After we calculate the due date, here's where we're actually going to assign those tasks. So here, I'm doing this based on who this task is assigned to. So I'm going to go ahead and click Assigned To Value. And just like we did before with our cases, we want to come back into the list and see our options for who this is assigned to. Our first one here is the HR department. I'll come back in here and put in HR department. And we'll go ahead and add an action. And we're going to use the Create a Task action. We'll go ahead and select Create a Task. And now here, we're going to have to select which group our planner is in. And we're going to select the plan ID. This is our onboarding tasks. And we're going to name our task. Now, in our task list here, we already have the title of our task, the description, and now we have our date of when this should be completed. So what we're going to do is we're going to search for title. And now here is where renaming things becomes really important, and when I typically notice that I've forgotten to rename things. This Get Items action here, if I scroll up, Get Items plural, was when we got all of our tasks. So that's the one that I want to use. So again, I'm using the Get Items title. The Create a Task action is not my favorite. It has lots of unnecessary information like all of these different tag category colors, and it doesn't have some of the information that we need it to, like a description of the task. So what we do is we'll go ahead and fill in the bucket ID, the due date, and who it's assigned to, and then we'll add a description afterwards. So in this bucket here, I just have my planner broken out into 3 different buckets based on which department or which person was assigned this task. So I'll go ahead and select HR department. Then in our due date here, since we've calculated the correct due dates, all we need to do here is select our variable for our due date and our assigned user IDs here. I didn't do any sort of dynamic content or have any of this logged in our SharePoint lists. I just chose to hard code this in here. If that's not the case for your organization, if your HR department, your people that are in charge of this onboarding tasks are going to change, you probably want to add that to your SharePoint list. For now, I'll just go ahead and put in my own email here. The frustrating thing about assigning users in the Create a Task action is that you have to type out their full email. It's not like other Power Automate actions where it will search your Active Directory for you. Now let's go ahead and rename this because we're going to have a few different types of tasks that we're creating. So I'll go ahead and click Rename. And this is for our HR department. Go ahead and click to collapse this. And we'll add an action here. And what we're doing is we are updating a task. Updating task details is the only way that we can add in a description. You'll see here, there's places where we can add links, we can add checklists if we want to. I'm going to do just the basic thing here and add in our description. Now in the task ID here, we can see that it's going to try to pull in every single task you have in Planner. You can scroll down to the bottom and click Enter Custom Value. And I just like to search for ID, and you're looking for the ID of the task here. Go ahead and click on this. And in our description, again, that's something we can search for. I can go ahead and click on description. Now, I'm not going to add anything else here. I'll go ahead and rename this. This is Update Task Details for our HR department. All right, let's keep rolling. We'll go ahead and add a case here. Our next department here is our manager or our next person this could be assigned to. So I'll go ahead and add that case here and click Add an Action, and we'll be looking for the Create a Task option. I'll select Create a Task, add in the group ID and the plan ID. Now again, we're searching for the title of the task, and that's the title column from the plural get items. Now, I also, even though I forgot to rename this, I can also think of this as we're getting lots of different tasks instead of just one new employee, so I want to look for the plural get items. Our bucket ID here, this is going to be our manager bucket. Our due date here is just going to be our due date variable, and our assigned user ID here, we do have the manager's email stored. And so I can go ahead and click on manager email. Now this is exactly how, if you wanted to make this HR department assignment dynamic, you could just store it in either of these lists. I'll go ahead and rename our step. I'll go ahead and collapse it, add an action, and we are going to update the task details. Again, we're looking for our task ID, so I'm going to go ahead. If you don't select fast enough, you'll have to go ahead and scroll all the way down to the bottom to enter a custom value. Search for ID. And here, again, you want to make sure you're selecting the right task ID to update. So we're updating from the manager side, so we want the ID of the manager task. Click on description, search for description, and click description. We'll rename this one, and we have one more case to create here. The last case we're creating is for our new hire here. So we're going to go ahead and click on add a case and type in new hire. Go ahead and scroll over. We'll click to add an action. We'll create a task. Again, we'll choose the group ID. Choose the plan ID. We'll add in the title of our task. And our bucket to place the task in is our new employee bucket. These are a drop-down list from our actual planner, so you can go ahead and set up whatever names of buckets you want to ahead of time. In the due date, we'll add in our due date variable and our assigned user IDs. We also have the new employee email stored here in the employee email column. Now we can rename our task here, close that task, add an action, and we will update the task details. Go ahead and enter a custom value to select our ID. Again, make sure you're pulling in the correct task here from that new employee step. You can see how if you would just let this auto create into create a task 1, create a task 2, create a task 3, that can get really confusing here which ID you're pulling from. And we'll go ahead and we'll search for the description here. And lastly, we'll rename this. Now let's go ahead and collapse everything here. And we'll rename this here. This is our create task switch. Now, the reason we want to keep these both inside the apply to each. The due date here, we want to calculate that due date for each onboarding task. So, although it looks like we're going to be creating 4 different values for that due date variable, it's only ever going to meet one of the switch cases. Then after we've correctly calculated the due date, then we move to the next switch. We want to create a task for that specific row. So again, we want a task for every single item in that task list. Now we can go ahead and click save. The last thing we'll do here is test our flow to make sure that it was set up correctly. Now, normally I would click on test in the top right-hand corner, but it's going to tell me that this flow can't be triggered for testing because we're looking at selected items. Okay, we're not able to run this flow manually to get the right item. So let's go ahead, we'll exit out of this. We'll jump over to our actual employee onboarding list. We can see here in this list that this first item here is me. I have a start date set to start August 18th, and I have a manager entered in here. So let's go ahead and find where we would even start this automation from. So you're going to look for the automate dropdown. In the automate dropdown, you're going to see 3 different things. We're looking for the flows dropdown. In this flows dropdown, you're looking for the name of the automation that you just set up. Mine is called New Employee Onboarding Checklist. I'll go ahead and click this. It's going to make sure that I'm signed into the proper applications. I'll go ahead and click Continue. And we'll click on Run Flow here. When we click on Run Flow, sometimes it looks as if nothing has happened. So here's what I like to do. I like to go back into Power Automate and click this back arrow to go back to the previous page here. And you're going to see that we have this 13 seconds ago, this automation started running. You can go ahead and click on the date and time, and you'll see in real time where this automation is in the process of running. It looks like from the time that I went to this automation that it has fully run successfully. You can see that through all the green check marks here. If you open up the Apply to Each here, we can see that both of those switches successfully went through. And you can see here that this is only one of 19, meaning that there are 19 different tasks that it looped through to create. Let's go ahead and come back into our SharePoint site and into our planner. And we'll see here, since I listed myself as the HR department and the new employee, you can see it that I'm assigned all of these tasks, and Amanda, my manager, is assigned the other tasks. You can see that those due dates were calculated automatically in here, and everything looks correct. Have fun setting up your onboarding tasks.